It was a rainy Thursday morning when Maya Robinson stepped into Marcy's Grindhouse, the small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a florist on 7th and Grand. She wore a simple tan trench coat, low heels, and no makeup, just her quiet poise. She looked like any ordinary woman starting her day. Few would have guessed she was the CEO of a tech company valued at nearly $1 billion. Maya believed in moving low, staying grounded, and treating every person like they mattered, because once she hadn't had much. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and espresso, warm and comforting, a stark contrast to the cold drizzle outside. Maya stepped into line behind students, city workers, and exhausted creatives holding laptops. She ordered her usual, a double oat vanilla espresso. She reached for her phone to pay, tapped the screen, and frowned when the reader flashed red. Card declined. Confused, she tried again. Same result. The barista smiled politely, though the people behind her began shifting with impatience. Maya realized what had happened. Her assistant had flagged her corporate card for fraud last night after an overseas transaction. She reached for her purse, only to remember she'd left her backup wallet in her driver's car. She sighed, lips curling into a self-deprecating smile. "I'll need to come back. I left my wallet. I got it," came a voice from behind her. She turned to see a man, mid-30s tall, with a worn leather jacket and soft brown eyes. He was already tapping his card on the reader. She protested. "You don't need to. It's $4.85, he said, grinning. "I've had my card declined, too. Pay it forward someday." Maya was taken aback, not by the amount, but by the lack of assumptions. No judgment. No fuss. Just kindness. She accepted the drink. "Thank you," she said sincerely. The man nodded once and stepped aside. No name. No small talk. Just generosity. As she left, sipping the warm espresso, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this moment mattered more than anyone else in the cafe realized. Some debts weren't about money. Some were about grace. And sometimes the smallest gestures revealed the greatest character. She made a mental note. Find him. Back in her corner office, overlooking downtown Los Angeles, Maya Robinson sat at her desk, trying to refocus on her agenda. Financial reports, staffing changes, and international meetings piled onto her day, but her mind kept circling back to the stranger at the cafe. That coffee had cost less than $5, but the moment had been priceless. She had felt something rare, seen as human, not as a brand or a number on a Forbes list. That mattered. Later that day, during a debrief with her executive assistant, Maya brought it up. "Do you know Marcy's Grindhouse? That cafe on 7th. Mara blinked. "The hipster spot with the chalkboard menus?" "Yes." "There was a man there this morning," Maya said, sipping her tea slowly. "Paid for my coffee when my card was declined. No idea who I was. No expectation. Just kindness. He wore a leather jacket, maybe mid-30s. Brown hair. You want me to find him?" Mara asked. "Yes," quietly. Mara was used to Maya's requests sounding strange before they made sense. "Consider it done," she said, already typing into her iPad. By the next morning, Mara had her answer. "His name is Evan Carter. Freelance web developer. Used to be a paramedic. Lives in Echo Park. Comes in every morning. Same drip coffee. Same tip, always cash." That's how Marcy remembered him. Maya scanned the file. No social media. No flashy resume, just a simple portfolio site and a few client testimonials. But what caught her attention were his blog entries, short, heartfelt posts on building accessible web tools for people with disabilities, seniors, and underserved users. His tone was humble, his insights deep. Maya Tech had been quietly developing a new initiative focused on inclusive design. Evan's perspective was exactly what they needed. Set up a meeting, Maya said. Offer him a consulting role. Tell him it's about a new tech product. Don't mention me. Mara smiled. You want the element of surprise. I want the truth, Maya replied. I want to know if he's the same man in the boardroom as he was at that register. That evening, she watched the city lights from her penthouse and thought, Not all investments start on spreadsheets. Sometimes they start with one person doing the right thing when no one is watching. Evan Carter almost deleted the email when it landed in his inbox. A tech company wanted to meet for a potential consulting opportunity. He assumed it was spam or another impersonal recruiter blast, but the sender seemed legitimate. He read it twice, then looked up the company, Maya Tech Holdings. Big, influential, not the kind of name that just stumbled onto his quiet portfolio site. He agreed to meet, curious, a little nervous. The café chosen was quieter than his usual haunt. When he arrived, he didn't recognize the woman seated at the back, focused on her tablet. She looked up as he approached, stood, and extended her hand. "Maya," she said with a warm smile. "Thank you for meeting me." "Evan," he said. "Thanks for reaching out." They talked tech. She asked questions, not just about code, but philosophy. Who do you design for? What matters more, speed or accessibility? How do you define digital dignity? Evan answered honestly. He shared how his work as a paramedic taught him to see the world through other people's needs. How, after an injury ended that chapter, he turned to tech, hoping to make tools that included, not excluded. "You don't use much branding," Maya noted. "I'm not selling a product," he replied. "Just try to be useful." She liked that. Then she leaned in, smile still gentle. "Do you remember a woman at Marcy's last week? Card declined. You paid for her drink." Evan blinked. Yeah, I think so." She looked kind of embarrassed. "Figured I'd just pay and move on." "That was me." He stared at her for a second, then laughed. "You're serious?" She nodded. "Well, now I feel underdressed." They both laughed. Maya said, "You had no idea who I was. That matters to me." "I don't treat people different based on who they are," Evan replied. "At least I try not to." She leaned back. "How would you feel about joining us? Consulting on a product focused on underserved users. Flexible hours. Pay that respects your time." Evan raised a brow. "Because I bought you coffee? Because you showed the kind of empathy we want in every line of code?" And just like that, the smallest act of kindness became the beginning of something far bigger than either had imagined. Evan accepted the offer with cautious optimism. Maya had extended a consulting contract for 6 months with full creative flexibility and generous compensation. It was the most stable opportunity he'd had since leaving emergency medicine. But more than the money, it was the challenge that intrigued him. The project, titled Bridge, aimed to make financial tools accessible to those most often left behind: low-income communities, immigrants, elderly users, and those with physical or cognitive disabilities. He began working from a corner desk in the Maya Tech Design Lab. The environment was sleek and high-tech, but what surprised him was how much freedom he was given. Maya dropped in occasionally, not to oversee, but to listen. She asked questions most CEOs didn't. How does this feel to a single parent with no tech background? Or would someone on a jittery connection still get the same dignity here? They worked well together. Evan brought his empathy and practical experience. Maya brought her vision, leadership, and keen business instinct. He appreciated how she let people shine without stealing the credit. She didn't need to remind anyone she was in charge. Her presence spoke for itself. During one of their brainstorms, Evan admitted, "I didn't expect this. I thought I'd be a token hire. PR fluff." Maya looked at him and said, "You paid for my coffee because you believed no one should feel small. That's not fluff. That's culture." As the product took shape, the team bonded over late nights, inside jokes, and a shared belief that tech could be better, simpler, kinder. Maya even began bringing Evan along to executive meetings where his honesty stood out in a room full of polished pitches. At first, some higher-ups bristled at the idea of a newcomer being given so much room. But when Maya shared the story behind his hiring, the room fell silent. "He treated a stranger with more grace than most people offer friends," she said. "That's leadership." For Evan, it became more than a job. It was purpose rediscovered, not through emergencies and flashing lights, but through careful lines of code and design choices made with people in mind. He often thought about that morning at Marcy's. and how a simple gesture over $4.85 had quietly rewritten the course of his life. 3 months into development, Bridge was ready for unveiling. The app's interface was sleek, yet intuitive. It spoke in plain language, offered budgeting guidance based on real-life behavior, and included options for visual impairments, dyslexia-friendly fonts, and one-tap translations in 12 languages. It wasn't just an app, it was a statement that financial dignity belonged to everyone. MayaTech organized a launch event at their downtown headquarters. The media was invited. Investors came with curiosity. The press expected another flashy fintech tool. But what they witnessed surprised them. Maya opened the event with data and strategy. She explained the market gap, the human cost of financial exclusion, and the billions lost because products ignored people at the margins. Then she paused and said, "But data only tells part of the story. The other part starts with coffee." She told the story of a day her card was declined. The man behind her paid. No questions, no pity, just kindness. That man, she said, is now the lead consultant who shaped this project. Cameras turned to Evan, seated quietly near the stage, cheeks flushing with surprise. The audience erupted in applause. The moment went viral within hours. Headlines read, "CEO hires man who bought her coffee, builds app for the underserved." But the deeper message wasn't about a twist of fate, it was about how we treat people when there's nothing to gain. After the launch, Evan stood beside Maya as reporters asked questions. One journalist asked, "Did you know she was the CEO?" Evan laughed, "I didn't even know her name." Another asked Maya, "Was hiring him just symbolic?" "No," Maya replied, "it was strategic. Evan sees people, not numbers. That's the heart of this project." Bridge saw over 200,000 downloads in its first week. Reviews poured in from seniors, single moms, first-generation college students, and immigrants grateful for a tool that didn't treat them like outsiders. Inside MayaTech, the culture began to shift. Teams referenced Evan's empathy-first approach. Designers questioned default assumptions. Developers prioritized accessibility from day one. And Evan? He returned to Marcy's one morning and saw a stranger's card decline. He stepped forward and said, "Don't worry, I got it." The legacy of a coffee repaid had come full circle. Bridge's success exploded beyond expectations. Within months, it was recognized by financial inclusion networks, featured in global fintech summits, and adopted by several nonprofit banks. But for Maya, the real impact was personal. She had built businesses before, but this time, she built something that felt human. Evan stayed on full-time, now leading the entire accessibility department. He worked quietly but was respected across teams. He remained the same guy, humble, curious, always asking how the product would feel in someone else's shoes. Maya often watched him in meetings and felt oddly grateful, not just for his skills, but for that single moment of compassion that had reminded her why she started this journey in the first place. At a quarterly company town hall, Maya addressed her entire staff. "Titles don't define leaders," she said. "Empathy does. Inclusion does. The courage to treat a stranger with dignity does." Employees who'd been skeptical now quoted Evan's blog posts. Interns asked to shadow his team. MayaTech wasn't just a tech giant now, it was a role model. Investors praised its ethics. Users praised its heart. One evening, Maya invited Evan for dinner at her penthouse. Over takeout and wine, they spoke not of metrics but memories. She asked him if he missed being a paramedic. Sometimes, he admitted, "But in that world, I help people in crisis. Here, I help them avoid the crisis." Maya smiled. "That's powerful." They toasted to second chances, not the dramatic kind, but the quiet ones, the ones that unfold when no one's watching. Bridge was changing lives, yes, but it had also changed them. They laughed over old stories, debated new ones, and watched the skyline shift under the stars. There was no romance, no drama, just two people who had crossed paths by accident and built something extraordinary on the foundation of mutual respect. Sometimes, being a CEO meant strategy, vision, and scale. And sometimes it meant remembering what it felt like to be just a woman in line, card declined, holding a coffee cup and praying for grace. A year after Bridge's launch, Maya was invited to speak at a United Nations conference on digital equity. In her keynote, she shared the story again, not to glorify herself, but to show how small actions shape systems. I was a CEO before Bridge, she said, but that morning in the cafe reminded me I still had more to learn. Bridge expanded globally. Its second version included new features co-designed by users in underserved regions. Evan led design workshops in community centers and online forums. He had become something of a quiet legend in the tech world, a man whose empathy had shaped a multi-million-dollar movement. Yet, he remained grounded, never chasing spotlight or praise. One day, Maya received a package. Inside was a receipt for $4.85 and a handwritten note from Evan. Debt repaid. Thank you for everything. She smiled, framed it, and hung it in her office. A journalist once asked her if it was a fluke, if the moment at the cafe had just been luck. She shook her head. No, it was choice. His choice to help. My choice to remember. Our choice to build something better because of it. Bridge was now used by over 10 million people. Families budgeted meals with it. Seniors scheduled bills. Teens learned saving habits. It didn't just help people with money, it helped them feel seen. And in that, Evan's simple act had created ripples far beyond the cafe. Every year on the anniversary of that morning, Maya visited Marcy's. She'd sit at the same counter, order the same drink, and if she saw a stranger struggling with their card, she paid for their coffee. Quietly, kindly, without explanation. Because legacies aren't built only through billion-dollar deals. Sometimes they're built through a $4.85 coffee, a moment of grace, and a decision to never forget what it means to be human. And every time she took that first sip, Maya remembered the world didn't change with applause or headlines. It changed when one person in a quiet cafe chose kindness instead of silence.